Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new. My name is Leah, and today we're going to be talking about 5 things that I let go after my spiritual awakening. I'm going to get right into it, but before I get into the 5 things, I did want to talk about, I have a lot of people ask, and I'm sure you've seen it all over the internet, and some people are like, what is a spiritual awakening? And I'm going to be honest with you. I tried to Google and find like a official definition for this, and I could not find anything. So I'm just going to tell you guys what I think a spiritual awakening is and what it was in my experience. So my spiritual awakening, I could best describe it as and this kind of goes along too with, if any of you follow my yoga business or my yoga page, my nonprofit, my slogan is Awaken Your Truth. And a lot of people are always like, well, what does Awaken Your Truth mean? And I think Awaken Your Truth and spiritual awakening kind of go together hand in hand. And what I always tell people is awakening your truth is finding out who you are at your core before the world told you who you should be. So what resonates with you, it's learning to trust yourself, learning to trust your intuition, and that all sounds fine and dandy, but as many of you know, if you've seen other spiritual awakening content, it's kind of a tough road to get there, right? You have to break things down before you build them back up. So for me, my spiritual awakening really tore away everything that I thought I was. I had a lot of ego deaths, things that I was attached to, identities that I was attached to that were really ripped away from me. And I had to ask myself at my core, like, who am I? What is my truth? And I know people roll their eyes at that and be like, oh, my truth, but I think that is really important. Like, what is your truth? What resonates with you? And I feel this really hard as somebody who is gaslit to the point where I didn't even trust my own interpretation of reality. And that might seem very extreme, but if you've been in an abusive relationship, then you totally understand that feeling of having just your complete reality. You're like, am I a bad person? Am I not perceiving things correctly? I can make a whole separate video on that, so I won't dive too far into that or get too far into the weeds, because I know that I can. But I had to have all of that stripped away for me to go, and it took me years really to trust myself and say, this is my truth. I stand in my sovereignty, and I believe these things to be true. This resonates with me. And really step into my own power, my own beliefs, my own happiness, really, and living my life for me. And that might sound selfish to people. Oh, that was the big one. I don't know if you guys can hear it, but it's really windy outside today, so the RV is kind of rocking. So hopefully it doesn't affect my video. But I think going through a spiritual awakening kind of literally wakes you up, right? It wakes you up and you go, oh, I don't want to be this person that society tells me I should be. Who am I really? And I really think that most people go through that in their life, trying to figure out who they are. And I think, sadly, that there are some people that go their entire lives without figuring that out, or living their lives for themselves, or being somebody that society has told us to be, right? So that's kind of, in a nutshell, very condensed version. I would say for me personally, if I had to try to pinpoint it, my spiritual awakening probably started back in 2016. I would say 2014 is when my life really started to fall apart and I started to spiral, but I spiraled for a couple of years. And then even in 2016, when I left the military, I would say that's when my real spiritual awakening started. I also kind of got into yoga. I say started, right? Because from 2016 until probably the last couple of years, oh my gosh, it's almost March of 2023 now. I would say End of 2019, I was really hitting rock bottom, and I had tried everything I possibly could to fix my mental health, get my stuff in order. It was just, and there was nothing in particular. I think it was just a culmination of all the things that had happened to me over the last decade, really, that were piling up on me. And so I had all I could take, And so if you're familiar with my story, how I became to be a yoga teacher, then you might know I got an email from All Yoga that was like, oh, do this training. And I went to my husband and I said, I've tried all the medications, I've tried this, I've tried that, and nothing is working for me. I'm very unhappy. I'm having, I don't think I can say it on YouTube, but having bad thoughts. I don't want to be here, that kind of stuff. And so I was like, I need to do something for myself. So I went to Bali for a month and I did my yoga teacher training. And it was only then that I allowed myself to be still and meditate every day and live very intentionally that I was like, oh my gosh, I have been living my life all wrong. For other people, I was a top tier people pleaser. That's something I still work on to this day. And I really had, at that point, January of 2020, I started living a very intentional life from that point on. So from January 2020 until, it's February of 2023, that's 3 years. I'm finally starting to feel like I'm kind of coming out of the other side. And unfortunately, I had felt that way a little bit before, but then I I got a little arrogant, if I'm going to be honest, and I was like, I can't even imagine what the next obstacle is going to be. And then at the end of last year, I split my head open, and I had a mild traumatic brain injury that I'm still recovering from, and that obviously traumatized my body physically, but it also traumatized me mentally. And so it sent me kind of back into that spiral of my PTSD. So when people say a spiritual awakening, I know a lot of people online, especially in like short form content like TikTok, people are like, spiritual awakening, and I'm like, okay. Like, because anybody who's really gone through it knows that you really have to trek through the shit before you get to the good part. So from 2016 until 2023. So I say that because if you feel yourself going through this evolution, just know that it takes time. It's not like in the short form content where people make it out like it's a 2-week process and all of a sudden you're some magical spiritual being. Like, no, that's not how it works. And I really think that honestly, I was listening to an audiobook recently by Elizabeth April, and she talks about having ego deaths throughout your entire life. So now I've come to the exception. What am I trying to say? I've come to accept, I guess what I'm trying to say. I've come to accept that this is going to be like an ever-evolving thing throughout my life, but I do really appreciate that now I am awake. I'm awake. There's no going back to the person that I was before. I've also had... Sorry, I'm trying to gather my thoughts. My thoughts are all trying to come in at one time. I have had friends, I had family that have said, oh, you've changed. I want things to be the way they used to be. And I've straight up told them, sorry, that's not going to happen. Things are not going to be the way they used to be. There's new boundaries. You can either respect them or take a hike. And luckily, I feel very blessed that the most important people in my life have had awakenings of their own and are coming along for the ride, and it's so great. So I did want to give a little prior explanation because I know a lot of people are like, what the heck even is a spiritual awakening? So I wanted to preface with that, and then also a little disclaimer before I get into the actual 5 points. I promise this is all relevant, all important. Before I get into the actual 5 points, I want to make a disclaimer that these are things that I have let go. And when I say let go, I mean really let go. Like, something that me and my husband have talked about is to let things go, you have to make your own peace with them. It has to be from a place of peace and not from a place of restriction. Because For me personally, I know if anything comes from a place of restriction, it won't be sustainable long term. So these are all things that I've made peace with, or one of the examples is going to be something I'm making peace with. I think it's going to be an ever evolving work in progress. But I am by no means saying this is what you need to do. I am by no means saying that if you had a spiritual awakening and yours is not the same as mine, that it's wrong. That's not what I'm saying. This is not prescriptive. This is just my own personal experience. People have asked me to talk about it, so I'm here to talk about it. So, with all of that being said, my first, and I know these are going to be some hot takes, and I know people are gonna, please don't take this as a personal attack. That's something else I want to say too, is that sometimes when I tell people that I've let go of these things, they feel a need to almost defend why they haven't, or kind of talk about like, oh, how they have but not completely, and feel the need to justify it. And I'm here to tell you, you don't need to do that. If someone else lives differently than you, that's perfectly okay. They're living differently than you. That's not a personal attack. That doesn't mean you're a bad person. It doesn't mean that you're doing things wrong. It means you have a different path than that person, and that's completely okay. So with all that being said, my first one is alcohol. This is a new development. I would say over the past year, I have slowly been backing away from using any kind of alcoholic substance. So I just don't drink anymore. Now, I will be completely honest with y'all and say this was kind of easy for me. While I used to heavily drink when I was single, especially after my divorce in 2014, I was working bottle service in downtown San Diego. It's very much a part of the culture. I got 50% off at all the other bars that were owned by the same bar that owned our bar, and I went out and partied and drank, and I had my fair share of heavy drinking. But to be fair, I have never liked the taste of alcohol. I always did it because it was something that society told us that we have to do. It's socially acceptable. It's how you're social in situations. It's how you loosen up, right? And I don't feel that that's necessary anymore. I don't feel like I need that to loosen up. I don't feel like I need it to have a good time. I don't like the taste of it. I don't like the way it makes me feel. And then on the flip side of that, I have medical issues of my own that are made worse by drinking alcohol. So I would say in the last 6 months, I have made the conscious decision to completely step away from alcohol. So for the past year, I would have like a drink here and there. I would go get like a wine slushie with my friend, or have wine occasionally. Like, I had completely stepped away from hard alcohol. But even wine, I remember we were in Fredericksburg, Texas, which is like wine country of Texas. And I ordered a glass of wine and I took a couple of sips, and I looked at my husband and I was like, I don't even like this. And he said, don't feel like you have to finish it then. Just because you paid for it doesn't mean you have to finish it. Don't drink it. Leave it on the table. And I was like, yeah, but I felt so rude. I had all these feelings, right? I felt rude. I felt weird for ordering a drink and not drinking it. I felt obligated financially because I had paid like the $10, $12 for the glass of wine, or all these weird feelings, right? But it was nice to have that validation, that outside validation, to say like, hey, you don't have to do this if you don't want to. So then I started getting into mocktails. And then I used to be one of those teachers that did like vinyasa and mimosas and whatever. And then I was like, you know what? The yoga teaching really does not need to be muddled by something like alcohol. So I'm really not a fan of things like that. Like, they're like wine and pints and poses and all that. And this isn't me judging you if you do those things. It's just, and I get it, they're trying to bring people into yoga that like usually aren't into it. But I don't think that's the way, in my personal opinion. So I really stepped away from that. Even at my like fundraising events and stuff for the nonprofit where I would do yoga, I started introducing mocktails to people and sharing that kind of stuff, getting into mocktails myself, because I really realized that I don't even like the way alcohol makes me feel. I don't like the taste. I just like having a special drink. And that leads me into my next thing that I let go, which was coffee. So again, complete transparency here. Coffee is something that I've never really liked the taste of. I liked it only if it had, only if it was like this much coffee and this much, plant-based milk with sugar and syrup and whipped cream and caramel drizzle and all that stuff, right? I basically wanted hot chocolate. So now when I want like a special drink that's like a hot drink while I'm out, I will go to Dutch Brothers. I get a hot chocolate. They add hazelnut in it. And it tastes just like the coffees that I was drinking before, because my coffee that I would get before, I am very sensitive. So I would get like half a shot of espresso or one shot maybe of espresso, but it would have me shaking like this. I couldn't do it. My anxiety was through the roof. It would make me irritable throughout the day. Even though I had energy, it wasn't good energy. It didn't make me feel good. And I was like, you know what? Same thing as alcohol. I just like a special drink. So I started to have hot chocolate, make other drinks, have tea, add honey. It's still kind of like a fun little sugary drink. I try to be careful of that too, but for health reasons. But I was like, I don't like the taste of it. I don't like the way it makes me feel. Same with alcohol, same with coffee. Cut it out. So for me, these are things that resonated for me. So I made my peace with it and I let it go. I don't sit here and go, oh man, I really wish I could have a glass of wine, or I really wish I could have a coffee. Like, I don't feel that way. As you guys can see, I have plenty of energy, which I have something else to thank for that. But that's going to be a whole separate video that I want to share with you guys, something that I recently started doing for my mental health, which is giving me so much energy and so much creativity, and it's just wild. So that'll be in the next few videos probably. Moving on to the third one. This is probably going to be a hot topic too, or hot take. I stopped watching violent TV shows or movies with dark energy, things that made me feel yucky or icky after I watched them. Anything that I have to watch and I have to look away so I don't cringe, I won't watch it anymore. A good example of this is my husband and I really liked Game of Thrones. That might come as a surprise when I'm like, I don't watch violent stuff, but that was before. So we really liked Game of Thrones, so we were watching that spinoff. I don't even remember what it was called, like House of the Dragon or whatever. I think that might be right. And the first episode, if you've seen the show, the lady's pregnant, they have a thing, they have to I don't even want to talk about it. Him and I were both like, I can't watch this. And we both looked at each other and we were like, well, do you want to cut this off? Do we want to keep watching this? And we both said, no, we don't want to watch this. We turned it off then. We never watched another single episode. We didn't even finish the first episode. Neither of us could handle the emotional turmoil of watching that on TV. And I think in a way society has become desensitized. And I could go down a whole separate rabbit hole on that, on whether or not it's intentional. Are we being intentionally desensitized? That's a whole different argument. But for me personally, I don't want to see things that are going to make me feel bad. Another thing is if you know me, I love Halloween. I love spooky. I love scary. But I will not watch possession movies. Anything that has to do with dark energy, just won't do it. I'm definitely not, and if you know me, you know this, I'm not a good vibes only person, but I don't do the dark energy. Nope, sorry, it's not getting invited in. It makes me feel icky. It makes me feel gross. Can't do it anymore. So, violent, dark energy, there's an airplane. I think the airplane's gone. So wrapping that one up, violent, dark energy, just any TV or movies that make me feel icky, they had to go. So I let it go. And again, that's something I made peace with, something that resonated with me, something that I listened to that little inner voice that said, why are we doing this? So the next one is very nuanced. And I had a hard time Woo! That was a windy one. Okay. I had a hard time boiling down a title for this one. And so the title I came up with was, "Are you trying to be super quiet? I appreciate you, baby girl. Lay down, okay? You can lay down out here on the floor. Just can't have you click-clacking around." Oh, you're gonna go back to your crate? That's fine too. We'll go for a walk when mommy's done. No, not now. When I'm done. Okay, so I had a hard time coming up with a title for this one. But what it boils down to is I let go of low quality foods. So for years I've been a person where, sorry, I'm not trying to be judgmental, you won't catch me at McDonald's. I'm not eating McDonald's. I'm not eating Burger King. Just not gonna do it. But you know, I used to be a Chick-fil-A girl. I used to eat Chipotle. Can't eat Chipotle anymore. Doesn't make me feel very good. Yeah, I would say there's a few places that I still am making peace with. I like corn dogs from Sonic. I like chicken nuggets from Chick-fil-A. But there's like very few things, right? And I've slowly just listened to myself. Like I've said with all the other stuff, I just listen to that inner voice, or I take what I call data points, right? I eat something, it makes me feel bad, and I go, do I want to eat that again? I don't think so. Or I will go, you know what? I haven't made my peace with it yet. I'm still going to do this. And I think when you say like, oh, I'm letting go of low quality food, people think like, oh, you just have to eat like organic and vegan and grass fed and this and that and whatever. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying do the best that you can with what you have. Do I think that what we get from the grocery store is the best quality produce and everything that we could have? No, I don't. I think it's much better if you grow it yourself, but that's not realistic for everybody. Hello, I live in an RV, even though I am going to try to grow my own mushrooms. So if you guys are interested in seeing that, let me know and I'll like document it. But, yeah, I just slowly started to, when I would eat things and it would make my body feel bad, I'm like, I don't want to eat this anymore. So I really let go of a lot of stuff. And for me personally, as somebody who used to deal with binge eating, my binge eating came from restriction. So that's why I say this has to come from a place of peace and not a place of restriction. I am someone who still loves ice cream sundaes from Sonic, but you won't catch me dead at McDonald's. You know what I mean? So you just have to go with what sounds right to you. And I told my husband the other day, I said, I think I'm being tested right now. I think like the next thing for me to make peace with is these freaking ice cream sundaes from Sonic. So I encourage you to make your peace with things, right? But to really listen to your body. Like this past year, I would say nourishing my body has become more important to me. So I started eating more fruits and vegetables. I started seed cycling. I started eating things that I knew were going to nourish my body and make me feel good. And that might not be the same for everybody, right? But I think we all know what it feels like to eat something and then feel like, oh, now I feel sluggish. I feel tired. I feel bloated. I have acid reflux, or I have heartburn or whatever. Those are all signals from your body saying, hey, this was not good for us, And I don't mean that in a moralizing way to say like good and bad foods. Like that's why I said there's so much nuance to this conversation, because it's something I'm still working on within myself. But I will tell you that making my peace with nutrition and feeding myself more fruits and vegetables and more things that are going to nourish my body has made a huge difference in my body. It's made a huge difference. I feel much better. So yeah, that is something that I've let go of, or I'm letting go of. I'm in the process of letting go of. There's a lot of things that I used to eat that I don't eat anymore. I don't eat out as much. And when we do eat out, we're very intentional about what we're what we're eating, right? So I think that's the most important part of all of this, is just the intentional living aspect. Being very intentional and not being stuck on autopilot with what we're feeding ourselves, like, oh, I don't want to cook and I don't feel good, and so I'm just going to do the easy thing, but I know it's just going to perpetuate this cycle, you know? So if you have thoughts on that, feel free to share them below. But yeah, I think that's as much as I want to share with that one today. Maybe I'll dive more into that later. So my final one has been such a game changer for me. I let go of keeping my phone in my room. So this is something I've done on and off for years. I think I even briefly talked about it in my my solo Sunday like Zen video, where I talk about how I didn't use my phone on Sundays. I stopped doing that because now I've kind of integrated that into like every day and not just Sunday. Trying not to be on my phone as much, being more intentional, but I don't keep my phone in my room. The Wi-Fi gets turned off at night, and I also don't look at my phone first thing in the morning. So I know a lot of people will be like, oh, well, I use my phone as an alarm clock, blah, blah, blah. First of all, I don't know about you, I never liked waking up to my phone alarm, no matter what, a dreamy ringtone I could find on there. Like, none of them actually made me feel like I wasn't being jolted awake. So, sorry, I have a little hair. I know a lot of people will be like, oh, I already said that. I never liked being jolted awake by my iPhone. So my best friend actually shared with me an alarm clock. I'll link it below if I can find it still on Amazon, but it's like a sunrise slow waking alarm clock. So it like mimics the sunrise, and then you can choose like ocean waves or a bird or whatever. And I know some people might be like, that's not going to wake me up. And I thought the same thing too, but just the light from my alarm clock would sometimes wake me up before the actual alarm would even go off. And then you can set it for like 15 minutes or 30 minutes or whatever, so it slowly wakes you up. I have mine set at 15 minutes. So when I do need to use an alarm clock, that's what I use. But I try not to. I like to wake up slow, so I try not to schedule things in the morning, but that doesn't always work out. Luckily, I'm somebody that works from home. I make my own schedule, so I have the ability to do that. I know that's not the reality for everybody, so please check out the sunrise alarm clock. It's freaking awesome. But with that being said, I like to wake up slow, right? So I would keep my phone in my room. I would wake up, lay in bed, scroll. I know we all do it. Even if you got to get up and go to a job, we're all sitting there scrolling in the morning. And I would spend, I'm ashamed to say, sometimes an hour laying in bed scrolling. So, and my husband had said to me, like, hey, this is one of the things that bothers me. And so I was like, okay, I'll take that into consideration. I won't use my phone in bed. So I started charging my phone outside of the room. I leave it in here in our like little living room area of the RV. And so when I get up in the morning, I still allow myself to lay there. I lay there until I feel like I'm ready to get up. And sometimes I'll go back to sleep if my body feels like it really needs it. Or sometimes I will lay there and it's the same thing when I tell people when they meditate. They're like, man, my brain's just like runaway train, right? Just doing its thing. My brain would do that when I first wake up in the morning. And so I just lay there and let it do its thing. And it's almost like meditative for me, right? I'm laying in bed. I have no obligations. I can just lay there and slowly wake up, get myself acclimated to the day. If you cannot tell, I'm not a morning person. So then I finally decide, like, okay, I've made my peace with it. Another theme of this whole thing. I made my peace with it. I'm going to get up and get ready for my day. So then I get up, I make my bed. Typically, I didn't make my bed today. I need to go do that. I make my bed, I get up, I brush my teeth, I do my whole face skincare routine, my makeup, whatever. And I've done all of that before I even touch my phone. Now, occasionally, I will then touch my phone, check my stuff before we take the dogs for a walk, but usually by that time, my husband's already up, the dogs are ready, everybody's waiting on me, and so then when I get ready, we take the dogs for a walk in the morning. So then I've done all of that, walk the dogs, gone for my hot girl walk in the morning, and then I come back and then I look at my phone. And there's actually studies that show this is better for your brain health and puts you in I'm not an expert on this, but it puts you in the right literal wavelength for your brain to be more relaxed. And so it's starting your day off in a way that's softer, more peaceful, and less chaotic, because we're really not meant to be looking at our phones as much as we do. We're really not meant to be interacting with people as often as we do, being bombarded with so many opinions and just outside noise. I know I'm preaching to the choir, and it's not like you guys don't know this, that we, the access we have to our phones is not necessarily good for our mental health, but this is one of the ways that I've kind of combat that, right? Letting go of that attachment to my phone, feeling like I need to have it in my room. One of the rebuttals that I've heard from people is like, oh, what about emergencies and blah, blah, blah. Well, if you have people that, like the people that would need me in an emergency live in my house, but if that's not true for you, then I can kind of understand that. But maybe just try to have some self-control and just discipline. Again, I'm not like telling you what to do. This is what I chose to do. This is what I've made peace with. Your journey's going to be different. That's okay. I'm just like offering up some suggestions. I kind of get that because my dad, I think it's been like a year now, maybe longer. He had a heart attack. My family couldn't get a hold of me because my phone wasn't in my room. It was on silent, and I didn't find out about it until my dad was already out of heart surgery. So was that kind of upsetting to me? Yes. However, could I have done anything? No. I would have just been awake, worrying for no reason while he was in heart surgery. So I didn't find out till after, and I was like, yay, everything's good, and he's out, and I'm happy that my dad is still alive, So I think that boils down to personal preference. For me, it was still okay. He was in Florida. I was in Texas. There's nothing I could have done to help him. It's not like I could have gone to the hospital. Again, if your situation's different, I understand that. Again, this is just something that I've done, something that I've made peace with. And that is my last and final thing that I let go after my spiritual awakening. Try to do things in a more intentional way. I think that's what this all boils down to. I think the most important thing, and anybody else who has been through a similar awakening will agree, that you have this awareness to live a more intentional life. Be more intentional with your time here. Be more intentional where you put your energy. Be more intentional of how you are living your life, and in a way that's meaningful for you. And that's really ultimately all that matters.